This isn't the Wild West you saw in movies. This is the version they didn't want you to know. The desert night presses against your skin like a warm breath held too long. You're walking through Lincoln County, New Mexico territory, not sure if you're being followed, or if you're the one doing the following. A boot heel crunches the brittle crust of sand. The moon slips behind a cloud, and for just a second, everything goes quiet. Then, the crack of distant laughter, high, young, almost boyish, but it echoes strange. You're not alone out here. Billy the Kid, he isn't a face on a wanted poster yet. Not really. He's just a figure in motion, a shadow ducking between shanty walls, a flicker in the corner of someone else's story. And if you listen close, you can almost hear his pulse beat through yours, fast, reckless, full of unfinished plans. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is over there. Always fun seeing who's drifting off across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You first meet him not in a saloon shootout or cinematic duel, but as a boy. A boy with hollows under his eyes, a battered hat too big for his head, and a way of slipping into a room unnoticed until it's too late. He isn't even Billy the Kid yet. He's Henry, or maybe William, no one's quite sure. His birth certificate didn't survive. And frankly, neither did anyone who tried too hard to get the facts straight. Most agree he was born in 1859 or 1860. Probably in New York City, but that's about where the certainty ends. His mother, Catherine McCarty, was a widow who moved westward, chasing cleaner air and cheaper hope. Consumption, tuberculosis, ate away at her. You imagine the kid, still small, sitting beside her as she coughed into a handkerchief she tried not to let him see. When she died in Silver City, New Mexico, he was orphaned, around age 14. And here's where the story fractures. The bad seed theory says he was already on a crooked path. But look closer. The boy scrubbed dishes at a hotel for pennies. He smiled at customers. People liked him. Then, one day, caught stealing food. Another day, caught with laundry that didn't belong to him. Lockup. A couple days. He escapes. Not with violence. He simply climbs out a chimney. Like smoke. You have to wonder, does that sound like a hardened criminal, or a hungry, scared teenager doing what he had to? Historians still argue whether Billy was naturally drawn to crime or simply reacting to the brutal edges of frontier life. There were no child services, no second chances. You messed up, you got locked up, or worse. And out here, jails were made of adobe and wishful thinking. By 16, he's already known by a few different names. Henry Antrim, William H. Bonney, even Kid Antrim. The aliases weren't part of a master plan. They were more like masks he put on to get by in a world that expected him to vanish. One quirky tidbit, he was unusually polite, for an outlaw. Anyway, even people who feared him admitted he had manners. Called folks, sir, and ma'am. Tipped his hat, didn't drink heavily, and rarely cursed. Just a boy trying to play grown-up in a world that mistook him for one. You walk beside him now through Silver City's dusty alleys. He's wiry, maybe 5 feet 7 inches, with blue eyes that stay locked on every door, every shadow. He's not fast with a gun yet. That comes later. Right now, he's just fast, at running, at thinking, at smiling before slipping something from your pocket. And you start to feel it. That gnawing unease that maybe, just maybe, this kid isn't who they said he was. Maybe the stories were trying to fit him into a shape that never quite fit. By the time he turns 17, he's already fled to Arizona, likely after an altercation involving stolen horses. And horses, back then, weren't just property, they were survival. Stealing one, that was as serious as murder. So what do you do if you're 17? Parentless, homeless, and already wanted? You keep moving. You learn how to talk your way into safe beds and out of bad situations. You charm. You vanish. And sometimes, you draw. Out in Arizona, it happens. The first confirmed kill. A blacksmith named Frank Windy Cahill reportedly bullies Billy, throws him around in a bar. And this time, the kid doesn't climb out the chimney. He pulls a gun, shoots. Cahill dies. Billy runs. Now he's not just a petty thief. He's a fugitive. And the gap between who he was and what the papers say he is begins to widen like a canyon. You might expect some melodramatic moment here. His hand trembling after pulling the trigger. Maybe a tear, but there's no evidence for that. Just that he fled. Again, slipping into New Mexico. Deeper into the Badlands. Deeper into the legend he didn't ask for, but was growing into. One dusty step at a time. And out here, in this wide silence under too many stars, you get the creeping sense that no one ever gave Billy a real chance. That maybe if someone had caught him, not to jail him, but to just listen, we wouldn't be telling this story in past tense. You press forward with him now, the air dry against your lips, the howl of a coyote somewhere to your left. The boy beside you isn't a killer, not yet, but he's no longer innocent, either, and that middle ground, that's where legends are born. You don't really notice the moment he stops being Henry and becomes Billy. It happens somewhere in the gaps, between towns. Between aliases, between bullet holes. The change isn't dramatic. It's quiet. Like a shirt turning color after too many washes. But soon enough, everyone starts calling him the kid. And it sticks like desert dust on boot leather. After that first killing in Arizona, he knows he can't stay. Cahill was a brute, yes, but the law doesn't care who threw the first punch. It only sees the boy with the gun. So he slips across the state line back into New Mexico territory. The Mesilla Valley swallows him up, and for a time, he disappears into the scrub brush and rumors. He's maybe 17 now. Most teenagers are worried about pimples. Billy's worrying about bounties. He tries ranch work near the Pecos, breaking horses and laying low. That's the strange thing about him, when he isn't running or fighting. He's good at just being quiet. Helpful. One rancher remembered him singing as he worked, upbeat tunes in a high, boyish voice. Imagine that, Billy the Kid, humming under the New Mexico sun while mucking out a stable. But peace doesn't pay, and peace doesn't last. He falls in with a gang of small-time rustlers, stealing livestock from the Mescalero Apaches and reselling it. And again, frontier justice wasn't subtle. Rustling was a death sentence if you got caught. The risk was constant, but so was the reward. One good haul could feed you for a month. 2, and you might finally sleep in a real bed. Historians still argue whether Billy actively sought out crime or simply drifted into it like tumbleweed. Did he enjoy the thrill? Or was it just the only way he knew to survive? Maybe both. Probably both. One quirky tidbit: at one point, Billy was actually arrested for being caught with a bundle of stolen clothes that he dyed with berries to make them look different. Clever? Absolutely. Effective? Not really. He's picked up in Lincoln County around this time and briefly jailed. But here's where it gets weird. The sheriff, a man named Harvey Whitehill, actually liked Billy, called him cheerful, polite, said he was as harmless as a schoolboy. You imagine the two of them, chatting in a dusty cell, sharing tobacco. Whitehill probably thought he was dealing with a clever prankster, not a future outlaw icon. And maybe he was. Then, Billy wasn't particularly violent yet. His rap sheet was mostly petty theft, jailbreaks, and horse thieving. But the world was already closing in. Being poor, rootless, and young in the West was a kind of crime all its own. You walk through Lincoln now, trying to imagine it without the bloodstains. Back then, it was a tense little town run by competing economic empires. Think of it like a dusty chessboard, except every piece carried a revolver. On one side, there was the Murphy Dolan faction, old money, Irish, deeply corrupt. On the other, newcomers like John Tunstall and Alexander McSween, young, ambitious, English, and hoping to bring change. Spoiler: change didn't go over well. Billy gets swept into it almost by accident. He finds work with Tunstall, herding cattle, watching over property. It's the most legitimate job he's had in a while. Tunstall treated him with respect, a rare thing. You can almost feel the warmth of that brief belonging. For once, Billy isn't just hiding from trouble. He's part of something. But the Murphy-Dolan side doesn't like competition. And when legal sabotage doesn't work, they send men. Tunstall is ambushed and shot dead in February 1878. That murder lights the match. Billy joins up with others loyal to Tunstall and becomes one of the regulators, an unofficial militia out for justice. Or revenge. Depends on who you ask. And that's the shift. That's when the cheerful kid who dyed stolen shirts with berries starts carrying a gun with purpose. You feel it now, standing beside him. Something's changed behind his eyes. Not hardened exactly, just colder, focused. This isn't a game anymore. He helps track down and kill Sheriff William Brady, the Murphy-Dolan man believed to be behind Tunstall's murder. The ambush is messy, right in the street. Brady takes multiple bullets. Billy himself is shot in the thigh but limps away, leaving a trail of blood like breadcrumbs through town. The press calls it murder. The regulators call it justice. You're not sure what to call it. This is the point where Billy starts to become Billy the Kid in public perception. Not just a name in court logs, but a figure, a presence. The newspapers latch on. Youngest gunman in the West. Child bandit. His face, what little of it anyone can describe, starts to take shape in the collective imagination. Pale, freckled, maybe smiling, maybe not. He's barely 18. You keep walking, dust swirling around your boots, and try to hold both truths in your head: that he's a teenager and a killer, that he can laugh while loading a rifle, that he once asked a preacher if he thought dogs went to heaven. Because out here, in 1878, nothing's clean. Not the air, not the politics, not the violence, and certainly not the stories we pass down. One thing's clear: whatever hope Billy had for a quiet life died with Tunstall. After that, everything gets louder, bloodier, faster, and you're not sure anymore if you're walking beside him, or chasing him through a memory that refuses to settle. The wind picks up over the plains, and you tighten your coat as you follow the trail, a path that starts to look more like a spiral the deeper you go. The name, Billy the Kid, starts to stick now. Newspapers, bounty posters, whispered conversations in saloons. Everyone's heard of him. Few have actually seen him. Even fewer would recognize him if he passed by. Because for all his growing fame, the kid moves like vapor, never in the same place long. Never leaving the same name twice. But everything changes the night Frank, Windy, Cahill drops. You rewind a bit. That killing, the blacksmith in Arizona, it wasn't just a fatal scuffle. It was a fuse. Frank was a bully, yes, but he was also a U.S. Army veteran and well-connected in Camp Grant. When Billy pulled the trigger, it wasn't just about self-defense anymore. It was a declaration, whether he meant it that way or not. It branded him as dangerous in the eyes of the law. You ride with him now through the desert night. The stars hard and clear above. The horizon flat and unwelcoming. Every hoofbeat echoes in the hollow air. He's left Arizona behind, fleeing back into New Mexico territory. Officially on the run. 1 kill on record. But in the coming months, that number starts to climb. Not always because he pulls the trigger himself. Sometimes, just being present at the wrong time is enough. Guilt by association is the law of the land out here. His reputation grows, but not through first-hand accounts. Most people hear about him second-hand, and the details get warped, exaggerated, the way gossip always does. Some say he's left-handed. He's not. Blame a reversed photo. Others say he can shoot the wings off a fly mid-flight. Also no. But catchy. The legend is taking shape faster than the man can keep up. Historians still argue whether the kid was actively trying to craft his myth or if it simply spun itself out of control while he was too busy surviving to correct it. Was he feeding the flames or trying to outrun them? You reach a small adobe village now. No signs, no street names, just dust, chickens, and doors left cracked open for breeze and curiosity. He passes through here once. Months ago, maybe twice. The locals remember him, not as a killer, but as the kid who helped fix a fence or fed the pigs when no one else would. He always paid for his coffee, they say, and he always tipped his hat. That's the strange duality you keep bumping into, the brutal and the gentle. Always swirling together in this boy they call an outlaw. You'd expect a killer to be cold, but he isn't. He laughs easily, jokes often, especially when the tension is thickest. The laughter is never cruel, it's more like armor. You can't hate someone who smiles like that, can you? And maybe that's part of what made him so dangerous. Not his speed, not his aim, but his charm. He slipped through people's fingers not just because he was fast, but because they didn't want to stop him. One quirky detail: he loved candy. Hard to come by in those days. But he always seemed to have some tucked away. Peppermint sticks, molasses drops. One account describes him offering licorice to a man he'd just disarmed. That's a certain energy. But the law didn't care about candy, or charm, or backstory. Billy now had a price on his head, and bounty hunters were listening, not just for the reward, but for the glory of bringing in the most talked about boy in the West. So he stays on the move, sleeping in dugouts, lean-tos, even under the open sky. He switches horses constantly, one day a gray mare, the next a black gelding. He trades names, too, sometimes Bonnie, sometimes Antrim, sometimes just the Kid. You lose track yourself as you follow him through the arroyos and sun-bleached trails. Then comes the killing of Buckshot Roberts, April 1878. It's supposed to be a routine arrest, or retaliation, depending on your angle. Roberts is holed up in Blaze's mill, a sawmill turned safehouse. The regulators arrive in force, demanding surrender. Roberts refuses. What follows is chaos. You duck as bullets rip through wooden beams. Windows shatter. Smoke chokes the hallways. Roberts fights like a man possessed. He kills regulator Dick Brewer, Billy's friend, and wounds several others before finally collapsing. He dies the next day. So does Brewer. It's a bloodbath. And the Kid is in the thick of it. This wasn't some distant crime or anonymous shootout. This was personal, messy, confused. And it's also the moment where Billy's name becomes cemented, no longer just a curiosity, but a genuine threat. He can kill, and he can survive. That combination terrifies people. You find yourself wondering, is this who he wanted to become? Or is he just trying to stay alive one day at a time? Each day carving his name deeper into the wrong kind of history. From this point on, he's never far from violence. He doesn't always start it. He rarely backs down. And when things go quiet, it's only because he's reloading. The newspapers can't get enough. They write him taller, crueler, more deadly than life. Some call him a remorseless demon. Others, a tragic youth led astray. The truth lies somewhere in between, as it usually does. He's still just a teenager. One man, an old shopkeeper, once said, he looked like he should have been in school, not a saloon. And maybe that's what sticks with you the most. He should have been. But the West wasn't a place for should-haves. It was a place where you learned to draw faster, or you didn't get another lesson. So you ride with him now across the Pecos, toward Lincoln again. His revolver is oiled and ready. His boots are worn, his hat too big, and he's smiling. That crooked, boyish grin, like maybe he knows something you don't. You're not sure if you feel sorry for him, or scared. But one thing's certain, you can't look away. You wake to smoke, thin tendrils curling through the rafters of a moonlit bunkhouse. Somewhere outside, a horse snorts, then a shot. You're up, heart thudding, and there's no time to think. You duck low, grab your boots, and slip into the fray. That's life now, running with Billy the Kid during the Lincoln County War. You don't get breakfast anymore. You get ambushes. The war isn't a war in the grand sense. No uniforms, no flags, just business rivalries gone nuclear. On one side, the Murphy-Dolan faction, an old money mercantile monopoly with deep ties to the corrupt county sheriff. On the other, the upstart Tunstall McSween group, new merchants trying to make commerce fairer. Or at least tilt the scales in their direction. Caught in the middle, you and Billy. Tunstall's murder back in February lit the fuse. But by spring 1878, things have escalated into open conflict. You're not trading letters or lawsuits. You're trading gunfire. Billy signs on as a regulator, part of a semi-legal posse meant to bring Tunstall's killers to justice. Only problem is, justice doesn't wear a badge in Lincoln. It wears whoever pays best. You ride with a strange group, cattlemen, lawyers, ex-soldiers, teenage drifters. The regulators are less a militia and more a grab bag of anyone who thinks the law's taken the wrong side. Their first targets are the actual deputies who ambushed Tunstall, William Morton, Frank Baker, and Jesse Evans. You track them, you capture them, and then, they end up dead. Here's the catch. They were supposed to be delivered alive for trial. But somewhere along the road, they get shot trying to escape. Which sounds convenient, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether Billy was responsible for pulling the trigger, or simply present when someone else decided to play judge and executioner. Either way, the message is clear. The regulators don't just arrest. They retaliate. You're in it now, deep, and the bullets are coming faster than explanations. One quirky but terrifying detail. During this time, Billy is known to carry 2 pistols and a Winchester rifle. Sometimes he wears a duster, long and dramatic, like something out of a spaghetti western. He's not just fighting, he's becoming an icon in real time. Local kids whisper about him. Young women give him second looks. Men grip their pistols tighter when he enters a saloon. The regulators gain and lose members by the week. Some are killed, some vanish, some switch sides. But Billy stays, increasingly at the center. He's not leading, exactly, but he's the one everyone remembers when the smoke clears. You pass through the courthouse square in Lincoln, and the walls seem to remember. There are scars on the adobe, bullet holes long faded but not forgotten. You swear you can still hear hoofbeats echoing against the buildings. Then comes the killing of Sheriff William Brady. Brady wasn't just aligned with the Murphy faction, he was their protector. A man with a badge and a list of Tunstall enemies he refused to investigate. On April 1, 1878, the regulators ambush him and his deputies in the middle of the street. Billy himself steps forward, rifle in hand, and fires. Brady is riddled with bullets. But it's what happens after that makes the moment linger in the legend. As the smoke clears, Billy darts into the street to retrieve a piece of paper, allegedly a warrant against him. He's trying to take it off the sheriff's lifeless body. That image, gunshots echoing, a teenager sprinting through a battlefield for a legal scrap, is burned into the mythos. You stand there now, staring at the dust where it happened, and you wonder, was that courage, stupidity, or just desperation? Again, the debate lingers. Was Billy an assassin or an avenger? Did he fire in cold blood, or as part of a war where rules had already been abandoned? Even his enemies admitted the fight had long since stopped being about law and order. It was personal now, chaotic, vicious. The kid, though, he starts to change. He's quicker to smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes like before. He begins to sense what you sense, that the walls are closing in. Even when they're miles away, and just when things couldn't get worse, they do. On July 15, 1878, the war boils over. You're barricaded inside the McSween house with Billy and a few regulators. Outside, Murphy-Dolan forces have surrounded the property, dozens of armed men. Some deputized, most not. For 5 days, they lay siege. You ration food. You sleep with one eye open. You take turns watching the doors. The kid, always alert, paces like a caged animal. This isn't a shootout anymore. It's a standoff. McSween, unarmed, still clings to the idea of peaceful resolution. Billy, he knows better. He sharpens his knives with a strange calm, eyes flicking toward the windows like they might explode at any second. And on the 5th day, they do. The house is set on fire. You cough through thick smoke. Your lungs roar. Bullets rain from every direction. You run room to room, dodging flames and gunmen alike. McSween is shot dead in the yard, along with several others. But Billy escapes. How? No one knows for sure. One minute he's trapped. The next, he's gone. Some say he crawled through a hail of bullets. Others say he leapt from a second-floor window and sprinted through the chaos. What's certain? He survives. And in doing so, becomes more than a gunslinger. He becomes a ghost. You sit now among the ruins of the McSween house. Nothing left but dust and a story that won't settle. Billy didn't start this war, but he's one of the only ones still standing when the shooting stops. The Lincoln County War ends not with a treaty, but with silence. Tunstall is dead. McSween is dead. The Murphy-Dolan empire limps forward. And Billy, he disappears into the canyons. And somewhere out there, the boy who once sang while mucking stalls is now a fugitive legend. You're not sure what's more haunting, how many people he killed, or how easily the world moved on and left him holding the weight of it all. You wake up somewhere along the Pecos, chilled and bone-weary, with saddle sores and dust where your soul used to be. Billy's already up, warming his hands over a flickering fire, face half-shadowed, eyes scanning the horizon. He hasn't said a word in hours, not since Lincoln. Something inside him shifted back there, maybe in the smoke, or when McSween collapsed beside him. The war's over, officially, but you both know that's just what they're saying, so the newspapers stop writing. What really ended was any illusion that justice had a side. And now comes the strangest chapter of all. Billy the Kid, outlawed and hunted, begins acting like some kind of desert Robin Hood. Or maybe just a ghost who refuses to vanish. The regulators are scattered. Some are dead, some moved on. Billy, he starts forming new alliances. Different gang, different town, same story. He drifts between safe houses, ranches, and high desert hideouts, never settling. Always watching the road. He's no longer fighting a war. He's surviving an aftershock. You ride into Fort Sumner together, a dusty cluster of adobe homes and worn-out soldiers' quarters now mostly populated by Hispanic families and quiet rustlers. This place isn't on any map that matters. And that's why it works. People here like Billy, they don't ask too many questions. They feed him, hide him, laugh at his stories, and he gives back. He helps herd cattle, plays guitar, dances at local fiestas with a young woman on each arm. For a moment, just a flicker, it looks like he might fade into obscurity, become a neighbor, a nobody, but the law hasn't forgotten. Technically, Billy's still under indictment for Brady's murder. There's a bounty on his head now, $500, which in those days was life-changing money. And yet, no one seems to be rushing in to claim it. Maybe it's the risk, or maybe it's because, somehow, Billy still feels like the good guy to the people around him. Historians still argue whether he actively cultivated this image or simply became the accidental anti-hero of a crooked system. Did he want to be liked, or just not left alone? He still steals horses. That doesn't stop, nor does the occasional bar fight, or run-in with deputies. But his violence is selective, never random. He doesn't shoot store clerks. He doesn't rob stagecoaches. In fact, more than once, he's reported helping poor ranchers recover stolen livestock, if the thieves weren't too heavily armed. That is, one fringe story you hear over coffee in a backroom saloon. A woman once gave Billy shelter during a storm. And in return, he left a silver dollar under her pillow. Sounds apocryphal, but somehow, you believe it. You meet a man who swears Billy saved his kid from drowning. Another who says the kid fixed a broken wheel on his wagon. These aren't the stories of a cold-blooded killer. These are the stories of someone trying to live like he still belongs to the world. Still, the circle tightens. The new governor of New Mexico, Lew Wallace, yes, that Lew Wallace, who would later write Ben-Hur, comes to town. He wants the violence to end, wants to clean house, and, somehow, the kid gets wind of this. So what does he do? He writes the governor a letter. That's right, Billy the Kid sits down, dips a pen in ink, and scribbles out a strangely polite note asking for a meeting. He offers to testify against the men who killed Tunstall, in exchange for a full pardon. It's bold, it's desperate, and it kind of makes sense. Governor Wallace, to everyone's surprise, agrees. The two meet in secret at the Mesilla courthouse. You sit on the porch outside, pretending to nap, but your ears are tuned like a hawk's. Billy promises to testify. Wallace says he'll arrange a fake arrest so Billy can maintain credibility. It's cloak and dagger stuff, with a dash of teenage optimism. And for a second, hope flickers again. Billy testifies, holds up his end, but the pardon, it never comes. The governor ghosts him, turns his back. Maybe he never intended to follow through. Maybe he got spooked by the politics. Either way, Billy's hung out to dry, again. You don't say anything when you see him sitting alone that night. Jaw clenched, hat pulled low, but you feel it, betrayal hitting harder than a bullet. Still, he doesn't spiral, he adjusts. Back to Fort Sumner, back to drifting, only now, with more caution, less laughter. He's been burned, and the next time someone comes offering peace, he might just shoot first. One quirky detail from this period, Billy loved to dance. Not just a waltz or two, he was a fiend on the floor. There are at least 3 confirmed accounts of him dancing with every woman at the party until sunrise. Some say he had a soft spot for Spanish guitar and sang off-key just to get laughs. You walk with him now through a moonlit arroyo. He's got a new hat, taller crown, feather stuck in the band. His boots are worn, but polished. The kid might be in hiding, but he's never sloppy. That's one thing no one ever said. He wasn't careless. He jokes again, here and there, smiles when he gets away with something minor, like stealing a watermelon or tricking a deputy into chasing the wrong horse. But that smile, it doesn't linger. The Lincoln County War is over, sure, but something inside him still fights. Maybe for justice, maybe just for the right to be young in a world that keeps trying to kill him. And you can't help but wonder, if Wallace had kept his promise, if one thing had gone differently, would the story you're walking through now have ever needed to be written? There's a heat to the town before you even reach it, Carrizozo in the far-off shimmer. A mix of cattle stink, smoke, and the anticipation of violence. You ride in slow. Billy doesn't like surprises anymore. Not after what happened in Lincoln. Not after Lew Wallace's backhanded handshake. And the man riding beside you. He's different now. Still grinning, sure, but it's a tighter smile. Still cracking jokes, but they land harder, like the punchline's got a trigger on it. You're about to step into one of the most infamous moments of Billy's short, turbulent life, the 5-day siege at Alexander McSween's home. You already know how it ends. Fire, blood, smoke curling like a serpent through the rafters. But you're not there yet. You're on your way back to Lincoln. Believe it or not, after everything, that Dust Bowl still calls. Billy's not there to cause trouble, at least not intentionally. But tensions haven't settled. If anything, they've simmered to something meaner. The Murphy-Dolan faction may have won the Lincoln County War on paper, but people haven't forgotten the body count. And neither has Billy. You hole up in the McSween house again, only this time with fewer men, less food, and even less hope. McSween is nervous. He still believes in law. Billy, he believes in loaded revolvers and keeping your back to a wall. It starts simple. Sheriff Pepin, aligned with the Murphy gang, decides to make a show of force. Deputies are called in, then gunmen, then more. Within hours, the entire house is surrounded. You, Billy, and about a dozen others are trapped inside. At first, it's more bark than bite. The siege begins with shouted threats, occasional potshots, and that terrible waiting, the kind that stretches time out like taffy. Billy doesn't sit still. He moves room to room, checking ammo, laughing too loud, trying to keep morale from collapsing. He jokes about the smell of burnt beans in the kitchen, tells one of the younger boys he snores loud enough to draw bullets. You chuckle, despite yourself. It's absurd. You're all one broken window away from becoming newsprint and forgotten dust. On day 2, The gunfire intensifies. They've brought in more men. 30, maybe 40, some are deputies, some are hired guns. A few, you suspect, just came for the sport. The McSween house turns into a sieve, bullets chewing through plaster and adobe like termites on a feast. And still, Billy laughs. He takes shots from the windows with a casual ease, reloading without urgency, even humming while he works. You ask him if he's scared. He shrugs. Only of running out of bullets. He says. Historians still argue whether Billy's composure under fire was bravado, fearlessness, or just another kind of mask, one he wore so no one would see how close he danced to the edge. By day 3, food's running low, water's rationed, sleep is a memory. McSween begins muttering to himself, pacing like a man already halfway into the grave. Billy watches him quietly. You can tell he knows what's coming, even if McSween won't admit it. Then comes day 4. That's when they torch the place. You don't see who lights the first flame. Probably one of the deputies in back, but it spreads fast. The smoke rolls in like a living thing, curling down hallways, pushing you toward the walls. You cough. Billy ties a wet cloth over his mouth and kicks a table into place as cover. It's chaos now. Gunfire from every angle, wood cracking from the heat. Screams. You lose track of time. You just know you're running out of it. Billy kicks open a back door, only to have it slammed shut by bullets. He spins, grabs a fallen rifle, and returns fire. Somehow, he's still grinning. Ain't this a party? He says. Then you hear it, McSween shouting that he's going outside. He wants to surrender. Billy tries to stop him, but it's too late. McSween steps out, hands raised. He's gunned down immediately. That's when Billy snaps. You see something harden in him. Not panic, not rage, just resolve. Cold and sharp. He signals to the others, rounds everyone into a back hallway, and forces a window. When I say go, don't think, just run. You don't argue. He kicks open the window and fires wildly into the smoke, covering your escape. One by one, you tumble out, crouch, run. Bullets whip past like hornets. You can't tell who's alive, who's down, but Billy's still moving. He's the last one out. He vanishes into the dark like a shadow with purpose. No horse, no supplies, just that stubborn, cursed will to survive. One quirky detail. Later, someone claims they saw Billy vault a fence, land in a barrel, and roll down a hill to escape. That's almost certainly made up, but it feels true, doesn't it? The siege ends with charred wood and headlines. McSween's dead. Half the regulators are gone or missing. The Murphy-Dolan men claim victory again, but no one's cheering. The town smells like gunpowder and lies. And the kid, he's not just alive, he's legend now. Because that's the thing, they thought they could trap him, thought they had him cornered. But Billy's not the kind of outlaw you catch with a noose and a badge. He's a flicker, a spark, and now he's more dangerous than ever, because now he's got nothing left to lose. You sit by the ruins that night, watching the embers drift upward. Somewhere out there, Billy's already found a new horse, maybe a safe house, maybe a girl who'll let him sleep with one eye closed. But you're still here, ash on your boots, wondering how the hell a teenager just outwitted an army, and what he'll do next. You're learning the rhythm now, the way Billy disappears and reappears like a sleight of hand trick you never quite catch. Just when the law thinks it's got him, he wriggles loose. Just when they close the trap, he's already 3 towns away, sipping coffee and grinning like he never left. Welcome to the part of the story where Billy the Kid becomes something else entirely, not just a survivor, not just an outlaw, but an escape artist, one who makes Houdini look like a man stuck in a broom closet. It starts small, petty jails, weak bars, lazy deputies. He walks out of one cell in Silver City by climbing up the chimney. Remember, that was the warm-up. Now, you're about to watch him slip past the kind of locked doors and loaded guns most men only leave in a box. After the McSween siege, the territory is crawling with lawmen. Some are after justice, most are after glory, or the reward money. Billy's officially a fugitive now, wanted for multiple killings, and the kid knows better than to sit still. So he keeps moving. You ride with him through Hondo Valley, where the canyons twist like broken promises and the locals pretend not to know his name. He stops for a few nights in Fort Sumner again, always Fort Sumner, where the adobe walls are soft with memory and the locals still greet him with laughter. Not handcuffs. Then, in 1880, the luck finally slips. He's captured. It happens near Stinking Springs, a lonely place with a smell to match its name. Sheriff Pat Garrett, the new man with the badge, finally catches up to him. Garrett doesn't come alone. He brings a small army, and Billy, for once, is caught off guard. You crouch behind a boulder and watch the cabin where the kids hold up. It's cold. Breath turns to steam. The standoff stretches into the hours, then into morning. Eventually, Billy and the small gang with him surrender. No shootout, just cold, quiet resolve. Garrett hauls him back to Santa Fe first, then to Mesilla for trial. This time, it's not just a holding cell, it's the real thing, and it's not looking good. In court, the outcome is pre-written. The judge's gavel falls with more gravity than the desert sky. Guilty, sentenced to hang. Execution date, May 13, 1881. The newspapers can't get enough. Billy the Kid, sentenced to death at 21. The crowds gather just to look at him in chains, to see the boy who outshot deputies, charmed barkeeps, and danced through gunfire. And still, he smiles. He jokes with his guards, makes fun of the judge's mustache, whistles, reads. They say he even wrote letters, full of snark and flair, like he was writing the closing lines of his own play. You stand outside the Lincoln courthouse where he's kept now. It's not exactly Alcatraz, just a couple of guards and some locked doors. But they've learned, they keep him shackled, station 2 deputies on him full time. Still, you get the feeling something's brewing behind those blue eyes. Billy's not planning to die. On April 28, 1881, just weeks before his scheduled hanging, he makes his move. You're there, maybe not in the cell, but you're close enough to hear the echoes. He asks to use the outhouse. Deputy James Bell escorts him. Somewhere in that short walk back, maybe on the stairs, maybe near the door, Billy slips one hand free. No one knows exactly how. Maybe he had a hidden key. Maybe he filed the cuffs down. Maybe he just waited for Bell to look the wrong way. He grabs Bell's own pistol. One shot. The deputy stumbles, collapses in the dirt. Billy sprints back into the courthouse, grabs a shotgun from the armory room, and waits. Deputy Bob Olinger, hearing the noise, comes running, probably expecting an accident. Maybe even thinking Bell was playing a prank. Billy leans out a second-story window, levels the shotgun, fires. Olinger dies instantly. It's not a chase. It's not a brawl. It's an execution, and the kid doesn't flinch. You stare at the spot in the window where it happened. The wooden sill still bears the scars. They say you could hear the blast for miles. And then, just like that, Billy's gone again. He steals a horse, rides out of Lincoln in broad daylight. Not fast, not panicked, calm, confident, as if he owns the road. Because, in a way, he does. That escape shakes the territory like thunder. 2 dead deputies, a fugitive loose again. Lawmen stumble over each other trying to catch up. But it's too late. Billy's in the wind. Historians still argue how he managed it. Was it poor security? Sheer daring? Inside help? Some say a sympathetic townsperson slipped him a gun. Others claim he bribed the jail cook. The official reports are vague. The truth, like always, rides off with him. One quirky fact: the shackles Billy removed, someone kept them. They're now on display in a small museum, polished like relics of sainthood. Because that's what he's become, an outlaw martyr. Immortalized not for how many people he killed, but how many times he slipped away. And the craziest part, this wasn't his last escape. Not even close. Because while he may be out of Lincoln for now, Billy doesn't know that the final chapter is already beginning. That Pat Garrett, the man who once rode beside him as a friend, is sharpening his aim. But for now, you ride beside the kid once more, free again, loose in a world that keeps trying to put him in a box. And he's laughing. Of course he is. Because if there's one thing Billy the Kid knows how to do, it's vanish. You can almost taste the desert on your tongue as you ride through the hills with him again, Billy. Freshly escaped, trailing the scent of gunpowder and unfinished business. The horse beneath him is fast. But it's not just the speed that carries him, it's the confidence. The certainty that he'll always be 2 steps ahead. And for a while, he is. But now, the chase is changing. It's not just the law that wants him, it's Pat Garrett. The man who knows him. The man who once shared campfires and coffee. And the man who's been promised $500 and a permanent name in history if he brings Billy back. Alive or not, Billy knows it. He can feel it. You can too. This isn't the ragtag posse nonsense from before. This is calculated, quiet, deadlier than anything he's faced yet. Still, for now, he's loose, and he's got a plan. Or at least, the spark of one. Back in Fort Sumner, because of course it's Fort Sumner, Billy returns to the only people who still treat him like a human being. Friends, allies, a few lovers, depending on which stories you believe. The Hispanic families there don't fear him. They feed him, hide him, they still call him El Chavato, the Kid. And once again, he tries to clean things up. Billy writes letters. He reaches out through intermediaries. He still wants that pardon from Governor Wallace. Despite being double-crossed once already, there's a quiet hope in him. Still, that maybe, just maybe, someone will offer a way out that doesn't involve a rope. Historians still argue whether Billy really believed Wallace would answer, or if it was just theater. A boy still pretending that words might save him in a land ruled by bullets. Meanwhile, Garrett's getting organized. The former bartender turned sheriff is building his network, gathering intel, sending scouts into every canyon and saloon. He starts publishing public notices, proclamations full of dramatic flair and florid threats. And Billy, he reads them and laughs. You sit with him on a porch one evening as he finishes a page aloud. Mock serious. The aforementioned William Bonney shall meet his due reward in accordance with the law. He looks over at you, smirks. They make me sound like I already died. One quirky detail, he starts signing some of his letters with a flourish, yours truly. The Kid, like he knows how history will want to remember him. And he wants the signature to match the story. But even the Kid can't outrun everything forever. Not when the world's shrinking around him like a noose drawn tight. In late June, he rides east with a few friends. Maybe to rustle some cattle. Maybe to meet someone, no one's sure. The reports are murky, conflicting, like so much of his story. What's clear is that Garrett catches wind of his movements. And he sets his trap. You can feel it now, how the air changes when the end draws near. You ride through the dark with Billy one night. The stars sharp and watching. He's quiet, still cracking jokes. Sure, but there's a weight to him. A slowing down. It's not fear, it's fatigue. He's 21, but you'd swear he's twice that. You wonder how long someone can live on instinct, on charm, on raw nerve, before something gives. And then, like everything with Billy, it loops back to the strangest part of all, the possibility of peace. Because right before the end, there's one last flicker of it. A man named Pete Maxwell, rancher, wealthy, somewhat neutral, lets Billy stay in his home in Fort Sumner. Quietly, without fanfare. There's no wanted poster nailed to the door. No ropes, just a soft bed, familiar faces. For a few days, the Kid is still. He eats well. He dances again. He flirts, talks, tells stories. You sit with him under a cottonwood tree, the air sweet with evening bloom, and he asks you something that catches you off guard. You think they'll remember me, right? He says, not looking at you, like who I was, not just what they wrote down. You don't know how to answer. Maybe no one ever does. Meanwhile, Garrett's already closing in. He rides in with a small group. Quiet as the wind, doesn't make a scene, doesn't even wear the badge. He starts asking around, low voices, careful eyes. He learns Billy's here, or at least was. And here's where the story tightens into something almost too cinematic to believe. On the night of July 14, 1881, Garrett waits in Pete Maxwell's bedroom. Inside the house, not out in the brush, not behind a badge, just sitting in the dark. Billy, unaware, approaches quietly. He's looking for a friend, maybe for Maxwell himself. He enters the room, sees a figure, asks, quietly, in Spanish, "¿Quién es?" "Who is it?" Garrett raises his revolver, fires, and that's it. Or is it? Historians still debate what happened in that room. Did Billy recognize Garrett? Did Garrett warn him? Did he shoot blindly? Some even say it wasn't Billy at all, that the man killed was someone else entirely, and that the kid slipped away once more. But that's for another section. For now, the town falls silent. Billy the kid, if it was him, bleeds out on the floor of a quiet ranch house, just a few steps from the people who might have saved him. The sun rises the next day over Fort Sumner like nothing happened. Chickens still cluck, coffee still brews, but you feel the absence like a thunderclap. The kid is gone. Or, at least, that's what they claim. You stand outside the Maxwell house, eyes on the quiet doorway, and you realize, for all his fame, for all his escapes, for all the gunfire and headlines, Billy didn't get a big finale. No duel, no grand gesture, just a dark room, a question, a shot, and somehow, that's exactly how he wanted it. You don't even feel your boots move as you walk away from the Maxwell house. The air's too thick, like history's pressing down on your chest. A shot in the dark, a boy left bleeding on the floor, and you still don't know if that was really the end, or just the start of another twist. Because now the dust doesn't settle. It swirls, questions rise, and somewhere under it all, you find the ghosts of loyalty, betrayal, and the people who filled the cracks in Billy's legend with something messier, something human. This is where we talk about the people who tried to anchor him, or break him, sometimes both. First, the women. They weren't all just shadows in the background. Billy had real ties, real feelings. The stories aren't always neat, but a few names come up again and again. Celsa Gutierrez, Paulita Maxwell. The names ring like echoes through the canyons he rode through. Not all the stories agree. Some say Paulita was the one he loved truly, others claimed she was a decoy, a name attached to the myth like glitter to a bullet wound. But picture this, a moonlit dance, candles flickering, guitar strings humming low. Billy doesn't talk about the murders here. He talks about horses, and music, and how hot the coffee was that morning. He looks over at her, whichever her it was, and for a moment, just a second, he's not the kid. He's just a boy trying to stay warm in a world that never lets you stop running. One story, unverified, but irresistible, says that Paulita was pregnant with his child when he died. Historians still argue whether there's any truth to it. The Maxwells never confirmed it, but it floats through the legend like a whisper. He left something behind besides bullet shells. Then there's the friends, his crew, the ones who rode with him even when it stopped making sense. Tom O'Folliard, Charlie Bowdra, Dirty Dave Rudaball, each one part accomplice, part family. You get the sense that none of them thought too hard about tomorrow. They just rode, laughed, drank, and bled for each other. That kind of loyalty doesn't come from violence. It comes from hunger, and cold nights, and realizing that nobody else in the world would bother to remember your real name. Tom was close, maybe closest. Killed just months before Billy. Shot down by Garrett's men while riding alongside the kid. Some say Billy never quite recovered from it. Others say he barely had time to mourn. Because grief, out here, has a shelf life of about 5 minutes. Charlie Bowdra, he didn't want to be part of the violence anymore. He told Billy he was done. Billy supposedly begged him not to go on that final ride with Garrett closing in. Charlie went anyway. He was shot down at Stinking Springs. You think about that as you pass through the place where it happened. Just a patch of dirt now. But the silence carries weight. These weren't just outlaws. They were kids trying to navigate a broken system with 6 shooters and second-hand dreams. But then, there's him. The one Billy shouldn't have trusted. Pat Garrett. That's the knife twist in the whole saga. Because this wasn't a stranger in the dark. This was someone who knew him, rode with him, drank with him, laughed with him, and still pulled the trigger. The two weren't blood brothers. But they weren't far off. Back when Garrett was just another ranch hand, he and Billy crossed paths often. It was a small world out there. Everyone knew everyone, and by most accounts, they got along fine, shared stories, maybe even watched each other's backs. So what happened? Well, Garrett took a different path. One paved with law badges and politics. In 1880, when he was appointed sheriff of Lincoln County, everything changed. He was handed a mission: clean up the territory, bring in the kid. But you wonder, even now, did he ever hesitate? One fringe detail. Some say Garrett tried to offer Billy a way out before the final showdown. A secret message, a warning, no hard proof of this. But the idea lingers, like a bitter aftertaste. Did he really want to kill him? Or was he just playing a role someone else handed him? Historians still argue whether Garrett fired because he had to, or because he wanted his own place in the legend. Some think the two made a secret deal and the killing was staged. Others say Garrett was heartbroken over it for the rest of his life. Truth is, no one knows, except maybe Garrett, and he took that to the grave. Years later, Garrett published a book, The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid, part memoir, part myth builder. It's half love letter, half obituary. He calls Billy brave, clever, but still paints himself as the hero. You get the feeling he wanted to have it both ways, mourn the boy, and still cash the reward. And Billy, he never got to write his side. You walk now along the Pecos, the river soft and wide beneath a burning sky, and you imagine what it must have felt like, trusting someone, riding beside them, only to feel that trust crumple beneath a bullet in the dark. It wasn't just the law that killed Billy the Kid. It was betrayal. It was politics. It was a world that never had space for someone who didn't fit the mold. Too wild to be tamed. Too charming to be feared. Too unpredictable to control. He was a friend to some, a brother to others, a lover once or twice, and to Garrett, maybe just a mirror, one that cracked when it showed the truth. The sun doesn't rise the same after betrayal. It doesn't shine so much as glare, hot, suspicious, like it's trying to catch you doing something wrong. You and Billy ride again. But the pace is different now. He's quieter, he still hums under his breath sometimes. Still grins when he gets away with something small. But there's less bounce in his step. Less spark. You can feel it. You've escaped death more times than you can count. You've outrun bounty hunters, lied to marshals, hidden in attics and under trapdoors, eaten cold beans by candlelight, and stared down rifles in every godforsaken corner of the territory. But now the circle's closing for real. The final capture doesn't feel like destiny. It feels like gravity, slow, creeping, heavy. It begins, oddly enough, with something as ordinary as a tip-off. Word spreads that Billy's holed up near Fort Sumner again, because he always returns there. It's the only place he ever felt normal, and Pat Garrett knows it. He plays it slow, methodical. He's already failed once to keep Billy in a cell. He won't make that mistake again. So he gathers a posse. Not the noisy, boot-stomping, bar fight kind. This is a quiet crew. Hand-picked, dead-eyed, armed and sober. Garrett's tired of chasing shadows. He wants a body this time. You're with Billy in a small shack near Stinking Springs. Appropriate name for what's about to happen. There are 5 of you total. Winter's biting, the wind pushing through the cracks in the walls. Billy's in decent spirits, joking about how bad the coffee is, teasing Tom Pickett for falling asleep on watch. But there's an unease in him too. He's watching the door more often now, listening between sentences. Garrett and his men arrive before dawn. They take position around the place without a sound. No war whoops, no shouted warnings. Just the cold snick of rifles being cocked in the dark. Billy's friend, Charlie Bowdra, steps outside first. Wrapped in a blanket, He's mistaken for Billy, shot, stumbles back inside, bleeding, dies in the corner. No more laughter. The kids calm, eerily so. He grabs his Winchester, fires through the slats in the wall. Garrett's men return fire, but no one rushes. It's not a fight, it's a noose tightening inch by inch. You crouch beside Billy, dust biting at your lungs. The others are panicking. One wants to run, another is already sobbing. Billy doesn't say much, just reloads, and waits. The standoff stretches into the hours. Cold seeps into your bones. Eventually, Billy knows there's no clean way out. He sends word, surrender, if they'll spare your lives. Garrett agrees. One by one, you step out, hands up, the kid's the last to leave. Always the last. He walks out slow, gun lowered, gaze steady. Garrett's there, hand on his holster, ready for anything. They lock eyes. It's not exactly a reunion. Billy smiles, because of course he does, and says something like, "Well, Pat, I thought you'd be taller." No one laughs, but the tension cracks for just a second. They take him into custody without a fight. Now comes the long, humiliating ride back to custody. Shackled again, jerked around like cargo. Garrett watches him constantly. No more chances. No more cracks in the wall. Billy's taken to Masilla first. That's where the trial happens. If you were expecting a fair shake, sorry, the courtroom is mostly a theater. And Billy's the lead actor. Witnesses line up, some too scared to make eye contact. The jury doesn't take long. Guilty. He's sentenced to hang. May 13th, 1881. Just weeks away. The judge's words are cold and rote. You are to be taken to the place of execution and hanged by the neck until you are dead. Dead, dead. Billy looks up and says, "That's a lot of dead for one boy." They transfer him back to Lincoln. He's held in the courthouse, same one where the war once raged. Full circle. 2 deputies guard him around the clock. They don't laugh at his jokes, don't trust his charm, and they're right not to. Because Billy's thinking, planning. He notices little things, where the keys hang, which floorboards creak, how often the guards get distracted. His mind's always moving, even when his feet can't. One quirky fact, during this time, he still signs autographs. Tourists and journalists come to gawk at the famous outlaw, and he indulges them. One woman says he offered her a quote for a story, "I never stole a cow I didn't need." You're not sure if he was being serious, but behind the smirk is a sharpness, a hunger. Billy's not done yet, not by a long shot. And you can feel it. Because this capture, it doesn't feel like the end. He doesn't carry himself like a man about to die. He walks with the same bounce he had at 15, when he was still stealing laundry and smiling through soot-streaked cheeks. He leans out his cell window and whistles. Still flirts with girls. Still calls his jailers, "sir." Like he's in on some joke no one else has caught yet. And maybe he is. Because you know what's coming. You've seen what he does with opportunity. With weakness. With just one open door. He's already turning over the keys in his mind. Even if no one else can see it yet. Pat Garrett's catching his breath. Thinking the story's winding down. But you stay close. Because you know better. The wooden floor of the Lincoln courthouse creaks under your boots. And even though the air is dry, you feel a dampness in your palms. It's not fear exactly, it's anticipation. You've seen Billy do the impossible before. But this time it feels different. Sharper, riskier. You're not sure if it's his last trick or his best one. Billy's locked up in the second floor holding room of the courthouse. And if you squint, it almost feels like the universe is giving him a test. Let's see if you really are who they say you are. And he's ready to answer. The escape is legend, you know that. But being there, seeing how it actually unfolds, it's not slick or cinematic. It's brutal, it's fast, it's real. The deputies assigned to guard him, James Bell and Bob Olinger, are rough men. Olinger especially has a reputation for being loud, arrogant, and a little too fond of bullying prisoners. He makes a habit of taunting Billy, likes to remind him how short the drop from the gallows will be. Leaves his shotgun leaning against the wall a little too casually. Always assumes he'll be the one in control. Big mistake. You hear the first commotion just after midday. Deputy Bell takes Billy downstairs to use the outhouse. Routine. But this time, the chains are looser. The deputy's distracted. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's fate. Whatever it is, Billy moves fast. No one knows exactly how he did it. Some say he had a hidden pistol smuggled in. Others say he grabbed Bell's own gun. What matters is that 1 second Bell is leading him through the hallway, and the next. He's stumbling down the stairs with a bullet in him. He dies just outside, in the dust. Panic ripples through the town like a dropped stone. Billy's back upstairs now. He finds Olinger's shotgun, the one he always leaned nearby like it was some kind of trophy, and he waits. Olinger, hearing the gunshot, rushes back across the street. Probably thinks it's a misfire, maybe even a joke, but as he steps into the courtyard, he hears Billy's voice, calm and clear, from the second-story window. "Hello, Bob." Then, the shotgun roars. 2 barrels. No hesitation. Olinger dies before he hits the ground. And just like that, Billy owns the courthouse. You're with him now, breath tight in your throat, watching as he moves like a man possessed. He breaks into the armory, grabs 2 pistols, checks the chambers like he's tying his shoes. Then he heads to the front office and starts searching, quick, methodical, for the keys to the chains still shackling his ankles. One quirky detail, he can't find the right key. Fumbles with half a dozen of them. Ends up using a pickaxe to break the cuffs off. You can still hear the clangs echoing through the empty rooms. He doesn't panic, doesn't rush, just works the problem. Then, he goes to the second-floor window, calls down to a few locals. "Get me a horse." No one moves at first. They're stunned, watching like they've just seen a ghost crawl out of the adobe. But eventually, someone does it. Maybe they're scared, maybe they're fans. Either way, within minutes, a saddle horse is tied up outside. Billy walks down the stairs. Slowly, calm, 2 pistols drawn. The townsfolk part like wheat in the wind. He mounts the horse, tips his hat. "Adios, boys." And just like that, he rides out of Lincoln in broad daylight. The town is paralyzed. By the time the first posse is formed, he's long gone, another puff of dust on the horizon. Historians still argue how planned this was. Did Billy have inside help? Was the whole thing orchestrated with someone in town? Or did he just improvise, watch, wait, and seize the moment when the universe blinked? The official record claims he killed both deputies in cold blood. But many locals didn't see it that way. Bell was armed. Olinger had bragged about shooting Billy if given the chance. To many, it felt more like a breakout than a murder spree. What's undeniable is the message it sent. You can cage me, but you can't keep me. And that's what drives the myth forward. The escape makes headlines across the country. Boy bandit defies gallows. Kid killer breaks chains in Lincoln. Eastern papers, which had mostly ignored him, suddenly want every scrap they can get. They can't get enough of the contradiction. A child-faced fugitive who laughs while killing. Who charms guards then shoots them. Who dances 1 week and slips cuffs the next. You ride with him again through the New Mexico scrubland. Low and golden under a wide sky. Billy's in no hurry now. He knows Garrett will be coming, but for the moment, he's savoring the freedom. You see it in the way he rides. Relaxed. Almost joyful. He may not be safe, but he's alive. And that's always been enough for him. He finds shelter in familiar places, old friends, old lovers, small towns that still see him as a boy wronged, not a monster to be feared. They feed him, hide him, listen to his stories. One fringe account says he told someone, weeks later, that he didn't want to run forever, that if the governor really offered a pardon, he'd take it, that he wanted a ranch, maybe a family. But no letter came, no pardon, just the sound of Garrett's boots drawing closer. And so you sit again by a campfire with him. Just the two of you. The sky stretching infinite and star-slick above. Billy pokes at the coals. Doesn't say much. You know he's thinking about what's coming. But for now, He just grins. "They'll never forget me," he says, "even if they try." And the thing is, he's right. Because boys don't usually escape hanging. And ghosts don't usually ride off into the dark with a shotgun still warm in their hands. But Billy does. Again. It's late. The kind of late where even the wind seems to move slower. You're back in Fort Sumner, where the desert flattens into silence and memory. It's July 14th, 1881, the night everything catches up. Billy's not hiding, not exactly. He's just here, resting in the only place that still feels like home. After everything, the war, the jailbreak, the betrayals, he's circled back to the one stretch of land that ever treated him like more than a wanted poster. You've been lying low with him for days now. The house he's staying in isn't much. Adobe walls, few windows, a couple of creaky chairs. But it's quiet, and safe, for the moment. Or so you think. There's music somewhere nearby. A guitar strums softly. A woman's voice, low and sweet, lilts through the still night air. You're sitting outside, watching the stars. Billy's inside, probably polishing a revolver, or maybe scribbling another unfinished letter he'll never send. Then you hear it. Hooves. Slow, measured, not the clatter of drunken riders. Or ranch hands coming in from work. No, this is something colder, more deliberate. It's Garrett. He's ridden in quiet, with two men, not the full posse, not a loud raid, just him, and shadows, and whatever regret might be hanging behind his eyes. He's been tracking Billy for days, maybe weeks. Listening, asking around, not pressing too hard, just waiting for someone to slip. And someone did. Historians still argue who betrayed Billy. Some say it was one of his own men. Others blame Pete Maxwell himself. Maybe even Paulita. There's no hard proof, just fragments. But the result is the same. Garrett knows where he is. You're at the edge of the Maxwell property when Garrett dismounts. He doesn't speak, doesn't draw, just walks toward the darkened house like he's stepping into a bad dream. The room Billy is in. Pete Maxwell's bedroom. And it's pitch black. Billy, unaware, has stepped out briefly, to check on a friend. Maybe to grab a bite. Then, barefoot and armed, he creeps back inside. You're standing at the edge of it all. Breath caught. Billy walks into the bedroom quietly. He senses someone there, a shape in the dark. He raises his voice, cautious, and asks in Spanish, "¿Quién es?" Who is it? No answer, just silence. And then, a gunshot. One, sharp, final. Billy gasps, stumbles, drops. He's dead within seconds. That's the official story, anyway. But here's the thing. No one saw it. Not clearly, not even Garrett's men. Pete Maxwell reportedly fled the room as the shot rang out. The only real witness, Pat Garrett. And he says it was Billy. He says he recognized the voice, the walk, the presence. But no autopsy, no proper identification, no lingering questions answered, just a burial the next morning, under a crude wooden marker near the Pecos River. A boy, 21 years old, dumped into the dust with only two other graves beside him, Tom O'Folliard and Charlie Bowdra. His friends, his family. One quirky fact, his tombstone reads, Billy the Kid, pals, Tom O'Folliard, Charlie Bowdra. It doesn't list a birth date. No one's ever agreed on that anyway. Just the death. July 14th, 1881. Except, did he really die? That's where the story begins to unravel and stretch into something else entirely. Because just weeks after the supposed killing, rumors start that it wasn't Billy, that Garrett shot someone else, that the kid escaped again, and this time went underground for good. Some claim he moved to Mexico. Others say he lived quietly in Texas under a different name. And then, in 1950, a man named Brushy Bill Roberts comes forward in Hico, Texas, claims he is Billy the Kid. Wrinkled, old, still feisty. He even petitions the governor of New Mexico for a pardon. The case gains traction. Historians, journalists, even amateur sleuths dig into it. Brushy Bill knew details no one else should have. Knew people, names, places. He had the scars, the limp, Even the voice. Still, no pardon, no confirmation, just more questions. He dies months later. A footnote, a headline, another ghost. Historians still argue if he was the real deal. Some say yes, point to facial analysis, testimonies, and timelines. Others scoff, calling it a hoax, a man desperate to live out a legend before he died. And Garrett, he spends the rest of his life being both praised and haunted. Writes that book, does interviews, but behind the words, you can feel the conflict. Some say he regretted it deeply, others say he profited from it. Both may be true. You stand now at Billy's grave. The modern marker is secured in place with iron bars. People used to steal pieces of it. Tourists still come, still ask the same questions. Was he a killer? A kid? Both? Did he die in that room? Or was that just one more escape? The wind picks up a little, rustling the cottonwoods. The grave doesn't answer. It never does. All that's left is a story. A shot in the dark. A boy with a pistol. A world too cruel to let him grow up. And you, standing in the dust, wondering if maybe, just maybe, he's still laughing somewhere. The desert doesn't forget. It doesn't explain itself either. So when you look at that grave in Fort Sumner and wonder if Billy the Kid is really beneath the soil, or if he vanished one final time under the cover of smoke and rumor, you're not alone. A lot of people have asked the same thing. Some ask quietly, like they're afraid of the answer. Others ask loudly, because a myth that doesn't die sells more books. This is the part of the story where things start to blur, where hard fact slips through your fingers like sand. And you're left clutching theories, fringe tales, and whispered confessions from men decades past their prime. Because the big question still looms. Who really died that night at Fort Sumner? Let's walk through what we know, or at least what we're told. Garrett says he killed Billy, says he shot him in the dark after the kid whispered "Queen S" in that unmistakable voice. That's his version, and it's the one that got printed in papers from Albuquerque to New York. But the evidence? It's thinner than a cattle fence in a windstorm. There was no proper inquest. No photos taken. No fingerprints. Not that anyone was checking for those back then. Just a burial the next day and a whole lot of assumptions. Pete Maxwell, the supposed witness, never gave a public statement. Garrett's own posse didn't actually see the shot, just heard it. You can almost feel Billy smirking through the cracks. Historians still argue whether Garrett shot the wrong man, or a decoy, or someone who was just unlucky enough to be standing in the wrong adobe house at the wrong time. And Garrett, well, his story changed slightly over the years. Not dramatically, just enough to make you raise an eyebrow. Some locals immediately expressed doubts. Swore up and down that the body buried in the Fort Sumner cemetery wasn't the kid. That it looked different, that it felt wrong. But try getting a straight answer in a town where half the people lied for a living and the other half prayed no one asked them anything. And then, decades passed. In 1949, a man calling himself Brushy Bill Roberts stepped forward in Hico, Texas, claiming to be Billy the Kid. He was old, nearing 90, but sharp, lean, and with a gaze that could make your spine shiver even in the Texas heat. Brushy Bill didn't just say he was Billy. He acted like it. He recited names, dates, personal quirks. He knew about the escape from Lincoln. He could describe the layout of the McSween house during the siege. He mimicked the speech patterns, told stories no one had ever printed. And most chilling of all, he remembered Garrett. Not kindly. You sit with Brushy now, in your imagination, on a cracked porch in Hico. He lifts his hat, squints into the distance, and says, "That man left me for dead." And it worked. For a while, a few journalists believed him. Others dismissed him outright. He looked too old, his story too polished. But the details, they stuck. One quirky detail. Brushy Bill's handwriting matched samples of Billy's known letters. Facial recognition technology, decades later, would claim a match between the famous tintype of Billy and photos of Brushy in his younger years. Still, in 1950, Brushy met with the New Mexico governor to request the pardon Billy had been promised 70 years earlier. The governor laughed him out of the room. Brushy collapsed just after, died shortly after that. No pardon, no validation, just another dusty name carved into the Billy the Kid mythos. You wonder, did the real kid live to see airplanes, radios, the Great Depression? Did he raise a family under a new name? Watching his legend grow from a rocking chair. Historians are still split. Some believe Brushy was the real deal. Others say he was a clever imposter with access to archives and a flair for drama. There's no definitive DNA evidence. No exhumation of the Fort Sumner body. New Mexico has never approved it, despite repeated requests. And let's not forget, Garrett benefited enormously from the belief that Billy was dead. He wrote books, gave interviews, gained fame, but he never offered real proof. And when asked if he had any regrets, he always gave the same half answer: I did what had to be done. You and I both know that kind of phrasing leaves the door cracked open. One fringe theory: some believe Garrett helped Billy fake his death as a final act of twisted loyalty. That the shot in the dark was staged, the body someone else's, and Billy slipped away with a new name and a fresh horse. It sounds crazy, until you realize just how often Billy had pulled that kind of trick before. So who really died that night? You might never know, but the real power of the story isn't in the corpse. It's in the doubt. Billy's legend thrives because of that silence in the dark, that space between question and answer. He becomes more than just a person, he becomes a symbol of defiance, of slipping through the cracks, of never giving the world what it wants. He becomes possibility, and you stand now in both places, beside the grave at Fort Sumner, and beside a rocking chair in Hico. In one, a boy who never got to grow old. In the other, a man who maybe did, but only by becoming someone else. You hear the wind pick up again, and in it, you swear you hear a voice whisper, Quen es. You take a step back from the mystery, brush the dust off your boots, and look at the whole picture, not just the boy, not just the grave, not just the questions that refuse to sit still. Because now it's time to reckon with the echo Billy left behind. The kid might have died that night in Fort Sumner, or not, but what's certain is this: he never really left. Billy the Kid became more than Henry McCarty, more than William Bonney. He became a story, a symbol, a contradiction you still can't quite settle. And now the question changes. Not, did he die? But, why did we make him a legend? It starts with the dime novels. Even before the smoke cleared, pulp writers were pounding away on typewriters in smoky rooms, cranking out stories with titles like The Boy Outlaw, or Billy the Kid, Terror of the West. They didn't care much for accuracy. They wanted blood, grit, and a hint of romance. So they rewrote him. No longer a hungry orphan caught in a corrupt land war. Now he was the dead-eyed killer who gunned down 21 men. Never mind that the real count is somewhere closer to 8 or 9. They gave him a twisted grin, eyes like daggers, a pistol in each hand, and the kind of one-liners Clint Eastwood would whisper a century later. And America loved it, because we needed it. The frontier was closing, railroads were flattening wilderness, cowboys were becoming clerks, and in that strange in-between moment, we grabbed onto Billy like a life raft, proof that there'd once been a time when things were wild, unscripted, dangerous, a time when a teenager with nothing could become someone everyone remembered. Historians still argue why Billy's legend endured while others faded, why he's the one painted on murals, stitched into bandanas, printed on matchbooks and shot glasses. Some say it's the tragedy, that he died young. Others say it's because he never fit neatly into the bad guy box. He was a killer, sure, but also funny, charming, strange. He didn't rob banks, he didn't massacre towns, he shot people who, fair or not, had usually shot first. He's the outlaw you almost want to like. And Hollywood, oh, they ate it up. Billy's been played by more actors than most presidents. Paul Newman, Chris Christopherson, Emilio Estevez, twice. Each one added a layer. Some showed him as a cocky rebel. Others a wounded soul. One film made him a Robin Hood. Another, a tragic loner. None of them quite nailed him. Because how could they? Billy didn't live long enough to become one thing. You walk through his cinematic trail now. Dusty gunfights. Slow motion standoffs. Dirt-streaked cheeks. Dramatic last words. Always too cool. Always too fast. But the real Billy, he had acne, wore baggy clothes, stumbled when he danced, laughed too loud, ate candy, sang off-key. You probably would have liked him. And yet, we keep polishing him into something shinier, something sellable. That's the strange curse of becoming a legend. The more famous you get, the less of you survives. Even his photo, the one famous tintype, has become a whole industry. It shows him slouched, unsmiling, one hand on a rifle. People argue about everything in it. Look at his eyes. They say, that's the stare of a killer. Or, he looks scared. Or, he's left-handed. He wasn't. The image was reversed. One quirky detail, that tintype sold at auction for $2.3 million in 2011. Not bad for a boy who once stole laundry to stay warm. You walk through museums now. Billy's face is everywhere, carved into bullets, printed on coasters, airbrushed onto motorcycle tanks. His name is stitched into the very leather of the American outlaw myth. But at the center of it all, still just a kid, still just a boy who never asked for the spotlight, only the chance to stay one step ahead of the people chasing him. You pause at a historical marker off Highway 60. It claims this was once a hideout of Billy the Kid. It probably wasn't, but that's never stopped anyone. Because the legend doesn't need facts. It just needs feeling. And Billy, the smirking, boots scuffing, pistol spinning, sweet-talking fugitive, delivered that better than anyone. Historians still argue if he deserved any of it. If we, the storytellers, turned a dangerous, impulsive teen into a misunderstood folk hero because it made us feel better about our own ghosts. Or if maybe, just maybe, Billy was what we needed him to be. Someone who broke the rules but not our hearts. Someone whose story ended just early enough that we could fill in the rest however we liked. You sit on a fence post now. The wind brushing past like memory. In the distance, a train rumbles by. A rancher waves. Time moves on. But Billy, he stays where he is. Forever 21. Forever somewhere between hero and criminal. A voice in the dark asking, "Quen es?" and a world still unsure how to answer. You hop down from the fence, adjust your hat, and head toward the next story. But you don't forget him. Because some legends fade, and some just reload. You're walking now, not riding, not running, just walking. The dust curls around your boots. The horizon soft and gold with the last breath of daylight. This is where the road ends. Not for Billy, maybe, but for you. Because this is the part of the story where you stop chasing the boy. And start wondering about the boy in you. All this time, you've been watching Billy the Kid move through a world that never bent. A world that asked him to play by rules written by men with thicker wallets and cleaner names. He didn't play, he couldn't, or maybe he wouldn't. Either way, he paid for it. And yet, he still danced. That's the part you keep coming back to, not the shootouts. Not the jailbreaks, not even the famous last words that might not have happened. No, what lingers is that image, Billy. Young, thin, freckled, hat slouched low, boots scuffed to hell, spinning a girl across the dirt floor at a candlelit dance in Fort Sumner. Laughing like he wasn't already a ghost. What do you do with a kid like that? The law tried to hang him. History tried to tidy him. We tried to worship him. But maybe all he ever wanted was something no one ever offered. A place to stay. A place to just be. No pistol, no posse, just a boy, maybe a ranch, a guitar, a second cup of coffee in the morning. But that's not how stories work. Not out here. He became an outlaw, yes, but not by birth. Not by choice. By circumstance. By survival. By systems designed to crush the unconnected. He was a child in a grown-up world with no net and no brakes. Historians still argue whether Billy was a monster or a martyr. Some point to his body count and shrug. Others point to his manners, his letters, his loyalty, the way he smiled before a gunfight, and say, there's more to it than that. But the truth, he was a kid, not a boy who grew up to be a killer, a boy who never got to grow up at all. You stand now at the edge of that Pecos wind, letting it wrap around you. The same wind he knew, the same sky, the same bitter stars, and you think about all the kids since who've been blamed for the world they inherited. Who got punished for playing the only hand they were ever dealt. Billy's story isn't just about outlaws. It's about expectations. It's about freedom, and what it costs. It's about the impossible dream of a clean escape. And yeah, it's about rebellion, but not the kind with manifestos and big speeches. The quiet kind. The kind you do with a half smile and a stolen horse and a name no one can pin down. One quirky little epilogue. The state of New Mexico still debates whether to grant him a posthumous pardon. That's right, over 140 years later, grown adults are still trying to figure out if Billy deserves official forgiveness. As if the ink on history's pages isn't already dry. As if he ever needed their permission to matter. He doesn't. He matters because you're still thinking about him. Because people still lean in when they hear his name. Because somewhere, in the parts of you that don't speak out loud, you've been wondering, am I like him? Not the gunfights, not the blood, but the being misunderstood, the needing to run, the not quite fitting into the boxes everyone else seems to live in so easily. You think about the weight he carried, about how he wore it like a joke, like a jacket with the sleeves rolled up, and you wonder how he did it. How did he stay soft? How did he still dance? You don't get an answer, just the hush of twilight. The campfire in your mind burns low now. The horses have gone quiet. Even the kid's shadow has slipped behind a hill you can't name. But that's okay, because the thing about Billy, he doesn't need to be seen to be real. He just needs to be remembered. And now, as the last embers of the story cool, you lean back, maybe in your chair, maybe under a blanket, maybe in a quiet place you've made just for nights like this. The wind outside your window, if there is one, hums softly, like a sigh from the desert. You've just walked through time, through dust and flame and laughter and doubt. You've trailed a boy who refused to fit, who ran not because he was wicked, but because the world gave him no other map. Let it settle, the clink of spurs fading behind you, the sound of boots on a wooden porch, the rustle of his laugh somewhere out of reach. It's all drifting now, like smoke from a campfire that burned too bright for too long. He's gone, but not forgotten, because Billy the Kid wasn't just a legend. He was a mirror, one that reflects the parts of ourselves still trying to figure it out, how to be wild and kind, how to break rules without breaking hearts, how to stay human in a world that asks us to be harder. Let that weight roll off your shoulders. Close your eyes if they haven't already. Let the desert cradle you. Let the quiet wrap around your chest like an old friend's hand on your shoulder. The kid is done running for now. And you made it all the way through. So sleep easy, and if you hear a whisper on the breeze tonight, maybe don't answer it. Just let him ride on.